Welcome to Lecture 14 of our series on prosody. In previous lectures, we explained many things known about how prosody functions. Maybe you believed us, but suppose you wanted to check things for yourself. There are many strategies for doing this. All essentially involve features. Maybe you want to investigate some other aspects of prosody. You need features. Build a model, build a system. In every case, working with prosody, usually you have to go from a speech signal or millions of speech signals through some process to obtain an insight, establish a fact, build a model or a system. Whatever method you use, probably features are part of the process. So a feature is just a measurement done to support some downstream task. For prosody, there are lots of possible features. We introduced a few in previous lectures. Here's our slide back from lecture 9. Going forward, we will broaden our view in two ways. First, we'll move from perceptual features to discuss also computed features, things that can be computed automatically from the signal. And second, beyond the basic low-level features, we'll overview derived features, things like pitch range over an utterance. So this lecture is about how to compute features and how to understand them. It'll continue for the next 4 lectures, actually. They're not just an undifferentiated mass, rather they come in some basic categories, which we can organize in terms of the stages for computing them. So first, there's a process of computing frame-level features, also called low-level features. They're frame-level features because they represent the prosody, some aspect of the prosody at a small slice, 10 or 20 milliseconds of the signal. These are not things that you can really perceive. They more directly represent articulatory processes. People vary, so we need to normalize the features to reduce the dependence on peculiarities of the speaker's voice. And then we can aggregate to come up with mid-level features, things like the average pitch height over a word, things that are more actually corresponding to some aspect of perception. In these lectures, we won't be talking about meaningful features, so things that have value for some specific language, tone 3 in Mandarin or the late peak pattern in English. We'll come back and hit some of those in about lecture 17. But our discussion of features will wrap up by talking about how those can be used for modeling, visualizations, statistical analysis, and especially for machine learning. Okay, 15, 16, 17, 18. Quite a lot to say about features. One theme of these lectures will be common pitfalls. There's many good choices on how to approach prosody. Many of them have similar risks. We'll see some things that naive people have tried, including me, and how those choices have caused problems. So for example, pitch range. It seems like that's an easy concept, but most obvious ways to create a feature representing pitch range are very non-robust and liable to give misleading results. There's also 2 big conceptual pitfalls. So here are some of the perceptual features we talked about earlier. Now, for some of them, on the computational side, there are good corresponding features, pitch and F0, volume and intensity. But still, there is sort of a gap, a deep, dark forest of confusion, microprosody, effects of noise. That means that the correlations are not perfect. That's even worse for things like creaky and jitter, breathy voice and CPPS, rate and cepstral flux. And there's also features that are easy to compute, voicing, spectral tilt, periodicity, which don't necessarily correspond to any percept. So, over time, I think science will advance. We will have features that better represent percepts like creaky voice, breathy voice, and rate, but there's always going to be some gap between the perception and the automatically computed features, something you always need to be aware of. So forgetting that would be one pitfall. A second pitfall would be believing that percepts are objective and real. So when I was young and foolish, I just wanted someone to tell me, what is the exact set of prosodic percepts? What are the things that human brains pull out of the speech signal? It would be great if we could know that. If we could, then people who are studying interpretation could just worry about mapping from those percepts to whatever meanings they're interested in. And the people who are interested in perception, psychoacoustic researchers, signal processing engineers, they could worry about modeling perception and not worry about the downstream tasks. And while I'm fantasizing, it would be very nice if we could just discover those percepts by studying the brain, by brain imaging or poking in some electrodes and reading out what the percepts are. Well, that's a little bit unrealistic. We'll probably never get that level of objective understanding of the percepts because they vary depending upon what task the person is trying to perform, or maybe from person to person. So whenever we're talking about features of any kind, they're really built on pretty shaky foundations. But that doesn't mean they're not useful if we use them carefully. So the next 4 lectures are about what are the features and how to use them carefully. That wraps up our overview. In the next lectures, we'll work our way through the various feature computation steps, starting with frame level F0. That is, in the next lecture, we'll cover the things you need to know in order to effectively use pitch trackers.